The winter wind cut through the soul alley like a knife. Taman pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders, but it didn't help much. The thin gray fabric was full of holes, and the cold found every single one of them. He was 17 years old, and this alley behind the old convenience store had been his home for almost 3 years now. His stomach growled. Taman tried to ignore it. He had found half a sandwich in the trash earlier, but that was hours ago. The cold made everything worse. When you were cold and hungry at the same time, you couldn't think about anything else. You just wanted to sleep and forget about everything. Taman looked at the blanket wrapped around him. It was the only thing he had left from his mother. She had disappeared one day when he was 14. She went out to buy medicine and never came back. The police said she probably ran away, but Taman knew his mother would never leave him on purpose. Something bad must have happened to her. After his mother disappeared, Taman had nowhere to go. His father had died when he was a baby, and he had no other family. The government wanted to put him in a shelter, but those places were always full. Kids fought over food and blankets. It was dangerous, so Taman ran away and learned to live on the streets instead. He stood up, wrapping the blanket around himself like a cape. Maybe he could find some bottles or cans to recycle. The recycling center would give him a few coins for them. It wasn't much, but it was something. He walked deeper into the alley, checking the dumpsters behind the old buildings. That's when he heard it, a strange humming sound like electricity but different. It was coming from the next alley over. Taman moved slowly toward the sound. Strange noises usually meant danger, and he had learned to be careful. He turned the corner and stopped. There was something there. It looked like a big metal egg about the size of a small car. Smoke was coming out of it, and the humming sound was getting weaker. The thing had crashed into a pile of garbage bags, and trash was scattered everywhere. Taman stepped closer. Part of the metal egg was open like a door. He could see something inside. His heart started beating faster. He knew he should run away, but something made him look. Inside the crashed thing was a child. At least it looked like a child. She was small, maybe 10 years old, but her skin was pale blue, almost like ice. Her hair was silver and seemed to glow a little bit in the darkness. She wasn't human. She was an alien. Taman had seen aliens on TV before. A few had visited Earth in the past year, but they always stayed in special buildings and met with important people. He never thought he would see one in person, especially not in a dirty alley. The alien girl was shaking. Her whole body was trembling, and her lips were turning darker blue. Taman recognized what was happening. He had seen it before in other homeless people. She was freezing to death. He looked at the girl, then at his blanket, then back at the girl. His mind was racing. If he gave her his blanket, he would freeze. The temperature was dropping, and it was going to be one of the coldest nights of the year. Without his blanket, he might not survive until morning. But the girl was so small. She looked terrified, even though her eyes were barely open. She was someone's daughter, maybe someone's sister. She was alone and dying in a strange place far from home. Taman made his decision before he could think too much about it. He unwrapped the blanket from his shoulders and immediately felt the cold attack his body. He climbed into the crashed pod and wrapped the blanket around the alien girl as carefully as he could. She was so cold that touching her hurt his hands. The blanket looked tiny on her, but it was all he had. Taman tucked it around her body, making sure it covered her as much as possible. Then he sat down next to her in the small space. Maybe his body heat would help keep her warm. The hours passed slowly. Taman had never been so cold in his entire life. His teeth wouldn't stop chattering. His fingers and toes went numb first, then his hands and feet. He kept his arms around the alien girl, sharing what little warmth his body could make. Sometimes she would move a little bit or make a soft sound. Taman talked to her, even though he knew she probably couldn't understand him. He told her about his mother, about his life on the streets, about anything he could think of. Talking made him feel less alone. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, even though he wasn't sure if it was true. "Someone will come looking for you. Your family's probably worried. They'll find you." As the night went on, Taman felt himself getting weaker. His body was shutting down from the cold. He couldn't feel his arms anymore. His eyes kept closing even though he tried to stay awake. He knew that falling asleep in this cold might mean never waking up. Just before dawn, something happened. The alien girl's eyes opened. They were beautiful like purple crystals. She looked at Taman's face, and even though she was weak, she lifted one small hand and touched his cheek. Her hand was still cold, but not as cold as before. She said something in a language that sounded like music. Taman didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was saying thank you. Then her eyes closed again and her hand fell down. Her body went completely still. Taman felt panic rising in his chest. Was she dead? Had he failed to save her? He tried to check if she was breathing, but his hands weren't working right anymore. Everything was fuzzy and far away. Taman felt himself falling sideways. He couldn't move. He couldn't keep his eyes open. The cold had finally won. His last thought before everything went dark was that at least he had tried. He had done the right thing, even if it cost him everything. His mother would have been proud of him. Taman didn't know that this one choice, this one act of kindness in a freezing alley, was about to change everything, not just for him, but for every single person on Earth. The sun started to rise over Seoul, painting the sky pink and orange. In the alley, a homeless boy and an alien girl lay still, wrapped together in a thin gray blanket. And somewhere far above in the darkness of space, 200 ships began their descent toward Earth. Part 2. The arrival. Taman woke up to noise. Lots of noise. His head felt heavy and his body ached everywhere. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was or what had happened. Then the memories came flooding back. The alien girl, the cold, the blanket. He tried to open his eyes, but the light was too bright. There were sounds all around him, engines, people shouting, something that sounded like sirens but different. His whole body was shaking, but not from cold this time. Someone was shaking him. He's alive. This one is alive, a voice shouted in Korean. Hands grabbed Taman and pulled him up. He finally managed to open his eyes. The alley was full of people. No, not people, aliens. They were everywhere. Some looked almost human, but their skin was different colors, blue, green, silver. Others were taller than any person Taman had ever seen. They wore strange clothes that seemed to glow and move like liquid. Above the alley, the sky was full of ships, not airplanes or helicopters. These were ships like nothing Taman had ever imagined. They were beautiful, shaped like teardrops made of pearl. They floated in the air without making much sound, just a soft humming. There were so many of them. 10, 20, maybe more than 100. They filled the sky over Seoul. Taman could hear screaming from the streets beyond the alley. People were panicking. Car alarms were going off. Somewhere in the distance he heard military vehicles. Where is she? Taman tried to say, but his voice came out as a whisper. The girl, is she? An alien woman knelt down in front of him. She was tall and beautiful, with pale blue skin like the girl. Her eyes were kind. She touched a device on her wrist, and when she spoke, Taman could understand her perfectly. The child lives, the woman said. Because of you, she lives. You saved her. Relief washed over Taman. She was alive. He hadn't failed. But then the woman's words registered in his confused mind. Because of me? But I just gave her my blanket. That's all I could do. The woman smiled, and Taman saw tears in her strange purple eyes. You gave her everything you had. You gave her your only protection against the cold. You stayed with her through the night, sharing your warmth. You were dying yourself, but you did not take the blanket back. Do you understand what this means? Before Taman could answer, more aliens arrived. They were carrying the girl on some kind of floating stretcher. She was still wrapped in Taman's old gray blanket. They had put other blankets on top of it, fancy ones that glowed with warmth, but his blanket was still there, closest to her body. A male alien rushed forward when he saw the girl. He looked like her, like they were related. He touched her face gently, then turned to look at Taman. The alien man walked over and did something that surprised Taman completely. He bowed. A deep, respectful bow. You are the one, the man said through his translator. You are the one who saved my sister. You are the one we have been searching for. Searching for. Taman's head was spinning. Nothing made sense. I don't understand. I'm nobody. I'm just a homeless kid. Why would you be searching for me? The woman helped Taman stand up. His legs felt weak and he almost fell, but strong hands caught him. The aliens were being so gentle with him, so careful, like he was something precious. You need medical care, the woman said. We will explain everything, but first you must be healed. Will you come with us? Taman looked around the alley. It was the only home he had known for 3 years. But what did he have to lose? These aliens had come here looking for something, and apparently they had found him. Besides, his body hurt so much and he was still so cold. Okay, he whispered. They took him to one of the ships. As they walked through the alley toward the street, Taman saw the chaos outside. Police cars and military trucks had surrounded the area. Soldiers were pointing guns at the aliens, but nobody was shooting. The aliens weren't acting hostile. They were just standing there calmly, waiting. When the soldiers saw Taman being carried by the aliens, their guns lowered a little bit. He was clearly human, and the aliens were helping him, not hurting him. An officer shouted something, but the alien woman raised her hand. "This boy is under our protection now," she announced in perfect Korean, her voice somehow carrying over all the noise. "He is a hero. He saved one of our children. We mean no harm to your world. We come in peace, and we come to honor this boy's courage." The inside of the ship was amazing. The walls seemed alive, glowing with soft light. Everything was smooth and curved, with no sharp edges. They put Taman on a bed that felt like a cloud. It was the softest thing he had ever touched. Aliens worked around him, passing devices over his body. Warmth spread through him, pushing away the terrible cold. The pain started to fade. He could feel his fingers and toes again. Whatever they were doing, it was working. "What's your name?" the woman asked gently. "Taman," he said. His voice sounded stronger now. "My name is Taman." "Taman," she repeated like she was tasting the word. "My name is Isul. At least that is the closest sound in your language. I am the leader of this search fleet." "Search fleet?" Taman asked. "You keep saying you were searching. What were you searching for?" Isil sat down next to his bed. "We were searching for proof. Proof that humanity is ready." "Ready for what?" "Ready to join the rest of the galaxy. Ready to know that you are not alone in the universe. Ready to become part of something bigger than your one small world." Taman shook his head. "But why me? I didn't do anything special. Anyone would have helped that girl." Isol's expression became sad. "Would they, Taman? Would they really? You had nothing. You were homeless, hungry, freezing. You had one blanket, the only thing keeping you alive, and you gave it away to a stranger. Not even a stranger from your own species, but someone completely unknown to you, someone alien and different." "She was a kid," Taman said simply. "She needed help." "Yes," Isol said softly. "She needed help, and you helped her. Even though it might have cost you your life." That, Taman, is the rarest thing in the universe. That is pure kindness. That is what we were searching for." The ship hummed around them, and Taman felt it lifting into the air. Through a window that appeared in the wall, he could see Seoul falling away below them. The city looked small from up here. He could see all 200 alien ships hovering over different parts of the city. "Where are you taking me?" he asked. "To meet the girl you saved," Isol said. "She is awake now and she wants to see you. Her name is Hanna. She is my daughter." Taman's eyes widened. "Your daughter? You sent your own daughter down to Earth?" "Yes," Isol said. And now Taman could see how much pain that had caused her. "It is our way. Every 1,000 years we conduct what we call the proving. We send one of our children to a world we are studying. The child goes down alone, in need, vulnerable. We watch to see what the people of that world will do. Will they help? Will they ignore? Will they harm?" "That's cruel," Taman said, anger rising in his chest. "You could have gotten her killed." "I know," Isol said, and a tear rolled down her blue cheek. "Believe me, I know. I have not slept since Hanna left on her journey. But this is how we know if a species is truly ready. Words can lie. Governments can deceive. But the actions of one ordinary person when they think no one is watching, that tells us the truth about a species." Taman was quiet for a moment, processing this. What if I hadn't found her? What if I had walked away? Then humanity would have failed the proving, Isol said simply. We would have left quietly and returned in another 1,000 years to try again. And because I helped her? Isol smiled. Because you helped her, everything changes. For you and for your entire world. Part 3. The Revelation. The ship carried Taman higher and higher until Seoul was just a pattern of lights below. Then they went higher still, beyond the clouds, beyond the sky, into space itself. Taman pressed his face against the window and watched as Earth became a blue and white ball hanging in the darkness. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. We are going to the medical ship, Isol explained. It is orbiting your planet. Both you and Hanna need more care. The medical ship was enormous. It looked like a city floating in space. As they got closer, Taman could see other ships coming and going like bees around a hive. Their small ship flew into an opening in the side of the big ship, and suddenly they were inside a huge bay filled with light and activity. Aliens were everywhere, all different types. Some were tall, some short. Some had 2 arms, some had 4. Their skin was every color Taman could imagine. They were all busy, moving with purpose, but when they saw Taman, many of them stopped and stared. Some smiled. Some bowed their heads respectfully. "Why are they looking at me like that?" Taman asked nervously. "Because word has spread," Isul said. "Everyone knows what you did. You are famous now, Taman, not just on Earth, but throughout the fleet." They took him to a room that didn't look like any hospital room Taman had ever seen. The walls seemed to be alive, glowing with gentle light. The bed grew out of the floor, and when he lay down on it, it adjusted to fit his body perfectly. Strange devices hummed around him, scanning his body with beams of colored light. A young male alien entered the room. He looked similar to Isul and Hana, with the same pale blue skin and silver hair. He smiled when he saw Taman. "Hello," the alien said. "My name is Doyen. I am Hana's brother. I wanted to meet the brave human who saved my little sister." "I'm Taman," he said, still not used to being called brave. "Is Hana okay?" "Can I see her?" "She is recovering well, thanks to you," Doyen said. "She will be here soon. But first I wanted to talk to you. My mother told you about the proving, yes?" Taman nodded. Doyen sat down in a chair that seemed to grow out of the floor when he needed it. "There is more you should know. Let me tell you about my people, the Villani. We are very old, Taman. Our species has existed for millions of your years. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. We have watched stars be born and die, and in all that time we have learned one great truth." "What truth?" Taman asked. "That kindness is the most powerful force in the universe," Doyen said. "More powerful than weapons. More powerful than technology. More powerful than anything else. A species that cannot be kind to strangers, that cannot feel compassion for those who are different, that species will always destroy itself eventually, but a species that can show mercy, that can give help even when it costs them everything, that species can accomplish anything." Taman thought about this. "So you test other species to see if they're kind?" "Yes," Doyen said. "Every 1,000 years we choose a world that seems ready. A world where the people have developed enough to understand choice and morality. Then we send a child down to that world alone and in need. We watch to see what happens. And most species fail?" Taman guessed. Doyen's expression became sad. "Most do. Some ignore the child completely. Some capture the child and try to use them for their own benefit. A few harm the child. Those species we mark as dangerous and make sure they never leave their own planet." "That's terrible," Taman said. "It is," Doyen agreed, "but it is reality. Intelligence does not equal goodness, Taman. Many smart species lack compassion. They see others only as tools or threats, never as lives that matter." "How many species have passed this test?" Taman asked. "In all our history, only 3, until now. Humanity is the 4th. Taman felt the weight of those words. Only 4 species in millions of years. It seemed impossible that he, a homeless boy from Seoul, had somehow made humanity one of those 4. "What happens to the species that pass?" he asked. Doyen smiled. "They are offered membership in the Galactic Union. They receive our help and protection. We share our technology with them. We teach them about the universe. We help them solve their problems, hunger, disease, war. We become partners with them. And the species that fail, we leave them alone for another 1,000 years. We hope they will grow and change. Some do. Many don't. It is sad, but we cannot force a species to be kind. They must choose it themselves." The door opened and Isul entered, pushing a floating chair. In the chair sat Hana. She was wrapped in blankets and she looked very small and tired. But her eyes were bright, and when she saw Taman, she smiled. Taman sat up in his bed. Hana's chair floated over to him, and she reached out with one small hand. Taman took it carefully. Her hand was warm now, not cold like before. Hana said something in her musical language. Her translator device spoke in Korean. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for your kindness." "You don't have to thank me," Taman said, feeling embarrassed. "I'm just glad you're okay." Hana's translator spoke again. "My mother says you gave me your only blanket. She says you almost died to keep me warm. Why did you do that? You didn't know me." Taman didn't know how to explain it. He thought about his answer for a long moment. "When I saw you, I didn't think about what species you were. I just saw a kid who was cold and scared. I remembered being cold and scared too. I couldn't just leave you there." Doyen translated this for Hana, adding details that the machine couldn't capture. Hana listened, and then she started crying. Not sad crying, but happy crying. She held Taemin's hand tighter. That is exactly the answer we hoped for, Isul said softly. You did not help because you hoped for a reward. You did not help because someone was watching. You helped because it was the right thing to do. That is the definition of true kindness. But I'm not special, Taemin protested. Lots of people would have done the same thing. Would they? Isul asked. In the 3 years you lived on those streets, how many people stopped to help you? How many gave you food or blankets or money? Taemin fell silent. The truth was, most people ignored him. They walked past like he was invisible. Some told him to get a job. A few kicked him or yelled at him. Only occasionally would someone give him a few coins or a piece of bread. You see, Isul said gently, most people, when they see someone suffering, they look away. They make excuses. They say it's not their problem. But you did not look away. Even when you had every reason to save yourself, you chose to save another. That makes you very special indeed, Doyen stood up. There is something else you should know, Taemin. What you did has consequences beyond just saving Hana's life. Your action has changed the future of your entire species. Because you passed the proving, humanity will now be offered membership in the Galactic Union. What does that mean exactly? Taemin asked. It means everything, Doyen said. We will give your people technology to end hunger. We will cure your diseases. We will teach you how to travel between the stars. We will protect you from hostile species. We will help humanity solve the problems that have troubled you for thousands of years. Taemin felt overwhelmed. All of that because I gave away a blanket. All of that because you showed compassion, Isul corrected. The blanket was just a thing. What matters is what it represented. You sacrificed your own survival for a stranger. That is the key that unlocks the universe, Taemin. That is what separates species that can join us from species that cannot. But what if I hadn't been there? Taemin asked. What if someone else had found Hana, someone who didn't help? Then we would have left, Isul said simply, and humanity would have failed. Maybe in another 1,000 years, someone like you would have been there. Or maybe not. Each species gets only one chance every 1,000 years. You were in the right place at the right time and you made the right choice. Taemin looked at Hana, who was still smiling at him despite her tiredness. He thought about all the people on Earth below. All 7 billion people. And somehow he had spoken for all of them with one simple act of kindness. The responsibility felt crushing. Part 4, The Choice. 3 days after the Vellani arrived, the United Nations called an emergency meeting. Leaders from every country on Earth gathered in New York. The whole world was watching. Nobody had gone to work or school. Everyone sat in front of their televisions and computers waiting to hear what would happen next. Taemin watched it all from his room on the medical ship. He had been recovering well, eating good food and sleeping in a real bed for the first time in years. But he couldn't really enjoy it. He was too worried about what was happening below on Earth. The world was in chaos. Some people were excited about the aliens. They wanted the technology and help the Vellani were offering. But many people were scared. They thought the aliens were lying, that this was some kind of trick to take over Earth. There were protests in every major city. Some people were even attacking anyone who supported working with the Vellani. Isul came to visit him every day. Today she looked more worried than usual. The governments are arguing, she told Taemin. Some want to accept our offer. Others want us to leave. They do not trust us. Can you blame them? Taemin asked. Aliens show up out of nowhere with 200 ships. That's scary. I understand their fear, Isul said. But fear should not stop them from making the right choice. We are offering to help humanity solve its greatest problems. We can end hunger in a year. We can cure cancer and every other disease. We can give you clean energy that never runs out. We can teach you to travel to other worlds. All of this we offer freely. What do you want in return? Taemin asked. He knew there had to be a catch. Isul smiled sadly. We want humanity to commit to kindness. We want you to promise that you will use our gifts to help each other, not hurt each other. We want you to end homelessness and poverty. We want you to take care of your planet. We want you to become a species that values life and compassion above power and greed. That's a big promise, Taemin said. It is, Isul agreed. And that is why your leaders are arguing. Some of them do not want to make those changes. Some of them profit from the way things are now. They are afraid of losing their power. Taemin understood. He had lived on the streets long enough to know that some people didn't want to help the poor. They wanted to ignore them or blame them. The idea of actually solving homelessness and hunger was threatening to those people. What happens if Earth says no? Taman asked. Then we leave peacefully, Isul said. We return in another 1,000 years and conduct the proving again. Maybe by then humanity will be ready, and if we say yes, then the real work begins. But Taman, humanity must choose this freely. We will not force it. A choice made under threat is not really a choice. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Isul came to Taman's room with unusual news. The United Nations has requested to speak with you. They want you to testify before them. Me? Taman felt panic rising in his chest. Why me? I'm nobody important. You are the most important person in this whole situation, Isul said gently. You are the one who passed the proving. You are the reason we are here. They want to hear from you. I don't know what to say to world leaders, Taman protested. I never even finished school. I'm just a homeless kid. You are Taman, Isul said firmly. You are the boy who gave everything to save a stranger. That is more important than any school or title. Speak from your heart, and you will say the right things. 2 hours later, Taman stood in a small shuttle heading back to Earth. He was wearing new clothes that the Villani had given him. They looked nice, but he felt uncomfortable in them. He was used to wearing old, dirty things. The shuttle landed at the United Nations building. Security guards surrounded it, but when Taman stepped out, they stepped back respectfully. Cameras flashed everywhere. Reporters shouted questions at him, but Isul and Doyen, who had come with him, kept him moving forward. Inside the building, Taman walked into a huge room filled with people. Every country had representatives there. They all turned to look at him when he entered. Taman had never felt so small and so visible at the same time. They sat him at a table with a microphone. The Secretary General of the United Nations, a woman from Brazil, spoke to him kindly. Taman, we have heard about what you did. We want to hear the story from you. Please tell us what happened. Taman's hands were shaking. He looked out at all those important people staring at him. Then he saw a television screen showing his face being broadcast around the world. Billions of people were watching him right now. The thought made him dizzy. But then he thought about Hannah, cold and dying in that alley. He thought about his blanket, the last thing his mother had given him. He thought about the choice he had made. And suddenly speaking became easier. I was cold, Taman began. I'm homeless. I sleep in an alley in Seoul. That night was very cold and I only had one blanket. It was the only thing I had left from my mother. He told them the whole story, finding Hannah, seeing her freeze, making the decision to give her his blanket, staying with her through the night. Almost dying himself. The room was completely silent as he spoke. Nobody interrupted him. When he finished, an ambassador from the United States asked, Why did you help her? You could have died. She was a kid, Taman said simply. She was scared and cold. I couldn't just leave her there. But she was an alien, another ambassador said. A completely unknown being. Weren't you afraid? Taman thought about this. I was afraid of the cold. I was afraid of dying. But I wasn't afraid of her. She was just a person who needed help. It didn't matter what she looked like or where she came from. And now, the Secretary General said, the Villani say that because of your action, they will share their technology with us. They will help us solve hunger, disease, poverty, but they want us to commit to becoming a better species. What do you think about this offer? This was it. This was the question that mattered. Taman looked at all the world leaders staring at him. He thought about his life on the streets. He thought about all the other homeless people he had known, the ones who had died from cold or hunger or violence. He thought about all the suffering in the world that didn't have to exist. I think we should accept, Taman said. His voice was quiet, but the microphone carried it to every corner of the room. I lived on the streets for 3 years. I saw people walk past me every day like I was invisible. I saw how much people can hurt each other, how much we can ignore each other's pain, but I also saw kindness sometimes. I saw it in the man who gave me bread once a week. I saw it in the old woman who let me sleep in her doorway during storms. I saw it in myself when I gave my blanket to Hannah. He took a breath. The Villani aren't asking us to be perfect. They're asking us to try. They're asking us to care about each other, to help each other, to stop ignoring people who are suffering. Is that really too much to ask? Taman looked directly at the camera. I'm not smart. I'm not educated. I'm nobody special, but I know that when I saw someone suffering more than me, I helped them even though it cost me everything. If I can do that, if a homeless kid can do that, then all of you can too. All of humanity can. We just have to choose to. The room was silent for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Not everyone was clapping, Taman noticed. Some ambassadors sat with their arms crossed, looking angry, but most people were standing and clapping, some with tears in their eyes. Over the next week, the debate continued. Television programs argued about it 24 hours a day. The internet was full of people fighting about whether to accept the Villani offer. Protest grew bigger on both sides. But slowly, public opinion began to shift. Taman's speech had been played over and over again. People responded to his simple honesty. Polls showed that 70% of people on Earth wanted to accept the Villani offer. Some countries still refused, but most agreed to try. Finally, after 12 days of negotiations, the Secretary General made the announcement that changed everything. By a vote of 174 nations to 21, Earth accepts the offer of the Villani. We commit to working toward a better future. We commit to ending homelessness, hunger, and preventable disease within 1 generation. We commit to becoming a species worthy of the stars. On the medical ship, Taman watched the announcement with Hana sitting beside him. She had recovered fully and was scheduled to return home to the Villani homeworld soon, but for now she stayed with Taman, her small hand in his. "You did it," she said through her translator. "You changed everything." Taman shook his head. "I just told the truth. Everyone else made the choice." "That is what heroes do," Hana said, smiling. "They inspire others to be brave." Taman didn't feel like a hero. He felt like the same homeless kid he had always been. But when he looked at Hana's smile, when he thought about all the people on Earth who might now have a chance at a better life, he felt something else too. He felt hope. Part 5. The Transformation. 6 months had passed since Earth accepted the Villani offer. Taman stood on the balcony of his new apartment in Seoul and looked out at a city that was changing every day. His apartment was small but comfortable, with a real bed, a bathroom, and a kitchen. It still felt strange to have a home after 3 years on the streets. The Villani had offered to give Taman anything he wanted. Money, a mansion, fame, anything. But Taman had only asked for simple things. A place to live, food to eat, maybe a chance to go back to school. He also asked if he could work with them, helping humanity adjust to all the changes. They had agreed immediately. Now Taman worked as an ambassador of sorts, a bridge between humans and Villani. His partner was a Villani advisor named Jiwoo, a young male with pale green skin and kind eyes. Together, they visited different cities and helped coordinate the massive changes happening all over Earth. Through his window, Taman could see one of those changes right now. A Villani construction team was installing a fusion reactor in the distance. The reactor would provide clean, unlimited energy to the entire city. No more pollution, no more power bills, just free, endless energy for everyone. Similar reactors were being built in every city on Earth. The Villani had brought thousands of them. Within a year, Earth would no longer need coal or oil or gas. The age of fossil fuels was ending, but that was causing problems. Taman had learned that change was never simple, even when it was good change. "Are you ready?" Jiwoo asked, entering the apartment. "We need to leave for the meeting soon." Taman nodded and grabbed his jacket. Today they were visiting a refugee camp outside the city. The camp housed people who had lost their jobs when their coal mine closed down. The Villani had promised to help these people find new work, but many were angry and scared. The drive to the camp took an hour. Along the way, Taman saw more changes. Flying vehicles were becoming common now. Small cars that hovered above the ground using Villani technology. The sky had traffic lanes now, organized by AI systems that prevented accidents. Buildings were being modified with Villani materials. The new materials could heal themselves if damaged, adjust their temperature automatically, and even grow larger if more space was needed. Some older people didn't like the changes. They said the city didn't look like home anymore. When they arrived at the refugee camp, the situation was tense. About 500 people lived here, families who had depended on the coal mine for generations. Now the mine was closed, and even though the government was providing food and shelter, the people felt lost. A man named Junho stepped forward as their spokesperson. He was about 40 years old with tired eyes. "You're the boy from the television," he said to Taman. "The one who started all this." I'm Taman, he replied. I'm here to listen to your concerns. Concerns? Shunyo laughed bitterly. We don't have jobs. We don't have purpose. Your alien friends came here and destroyed our way of life. They say it's for the better, but how is it better if we're useless now? Jiwoo stepped forward. You are not useless. The work you did before was harmful to your planet, but it was honest work. We understand that. We want to help you find new purpose. Doing what? A woman shouted from the crowd. We're coal miners. That's what we know. What else can we do? Taman understood their anger. He had felt useless too when he was homeless. The Villani are building new cities on Mars, he said. They need workers. Not just engineers and scientists, but regular people who can do hard physical work. They're offering full training and good pay. Mars? Juno shook his head. You want us to leave Earth? Not forever, Jiwoo explained. Work contracts are for 2 years. Then you can come home with enough money to retire comfortably. Or you can stay and make Mars your new home. The choice is yours, the crowd murmured. Some people looked interested. Others looked even more upset. An old woman pushed through the crowd. What about those of us who are too old to go to Mars? What about the children? You can't send everyone away. We're not sending anyone away, Taman said. We're offering opportunities. For those who want to stay on Earth, there are other options. The Villani are teaching new skills. Medicine, engineering, art, teaching. They have programs for everyone. But we're coal miners, Unyo insisted. We're proud of what we do. We're proud of what we did. Taman stepped closer to him. I was homeless. I lived in an alley and ate from trash cans. I was proud too, in a way. Proud that I survived. But when I got the chance for something better, I took it. That doesn't mean my old life didn't matter. It just means I was ready for something new. Junho stared at Taman for a long moment. Easy for you to say. You're famous now. You live in a nice apartment. You work with the aliens. What do you know about real struggle? Those words hurt, but Taman didn't get angry. I know that 6 months ago I was still sleeping in that alley. I know what it's like to be hungry and cold and scared. I know what it's like when nobody seems to care if you live or die. The difference between me and you is that I had nothing to lose. You had something, and now you feel like it's being taken away. I understand that. He looked around at all the faces watching him. But here's the truth. The world is changing whether we like it or not. Coal was killing our planet. It had to stop. The Villani didn't do this to hurt you. They did it to save everyone. Now they're trying to help you find a new path. You can be angry about it, or you can be part of building something better. The meeting went on for another 2 hours. Jiwoo explained all the programs available to the displaced workers. Training courses that would last 3 months. Guaranteed jobs afterward. Financial support during the transition. Medical care using Villani technology that could cure diseases and even reverse aging. Slowly, people started asking real questions instead of just complaining. By the end, 40 people had signed up for the Mars program. Another 100 wanted information about the training courses. It wasn't everyone, but it was a start. As they drove back to Seoul, Jiwoo said, You did well today. Your words reached them. Some of them, Taman said, but not all. There are still people who hate the changes, who hate the Villani, who hate me for starting all this. That was true. Taman received death threats every week. Some groups called him a traitor to humanity. They said he had sold out Earth to aliens. A few extremists had even tried to attack Villani facilities. So far, nobody had been seriously hurt, but the tension was real. Change is always difficult, Jiwoo said. Even good change. People fear what they don't understand. That evening, Taman visited a medical center where Villani doctors were working. He wanted to see the good that was happening, to balance out the difficulty of the day. The center was full of people receiving treatments that would have been impossible 6 months ago. He watched as a girl who had been blind since birth received special injections that would restore her vision over the next week. He saw a man with a missing leg receiving a bioprinted replacement that would function just like his original leg. He saw cancer patients being cured, their tumors dissolved by nanomachines too small to see. A doctor named Mina approached him. She was human, about 30 years old, and had been one of the first doctors to learn Villani medical techniques. Taman, she greeted him. Come to see the miracles? Are they miracles? Taman asked. Or just science we didn't understand yet? Mina smiled. Maybe both. I never thought I'd see the things I'm seeing now. Diseases that we thought were incurable just gone. Injuries that would have left people disabled for life, completely healed. It's amazing, but Taman heard the doubt in her voice. Mina's smile faded. But I wonder sometimes, what happens when the Villani leave? We're learning their techniques, but their technology is so advanced. If they go away and take their machines with them, can we keep doing this? Why would they leave? Taman asked. They said they're here to help. They're here to help us become independent, Mina corrected. That's different. Eventually, they'll expect us to stand on our own. What if we're not ready? Her words troubled Taman. He had never thought about the Villani leaving. They had become such a constant presence in his life that he couldn't imagine Earth without them anymore. But Mina was right. The Villani wouldn't stay forever. They had their own worlds, their own lives. Earth was just one of many species they were helping. That night, Taman couldn't sleep. He stood on his balcony and looked at the stars. Somewhere up there was the Villani homeworld. Somewhere up there was Hana, who had returned home with her family. She sent him messages sometimes, telling him about her life, asking about his. He missed her. He thought about what Mina had said. What if Earth wasn't ready? What if they failed? Taman had given his blanket to save one alien girl, and that had led to all of this. But what if humanity couldn't live up to the promise they had made? His phone buzzed. It was a message from Hana. Even though it was the middle of the night in Seoul, it was daytime on her world. The message was simple: don't worry so much. You planted a good seed, trust it to grow. Taman smiled. Hana couldn't read his thoughts, but somehow she always knew when he needed encouragement. He looked back at the stars and made a quiet promise. He would keep working. Keep trying. Keep believing that humanity could become something better. They had passed the proving. Now they had to prove they deserved it. Part 6. The Testone year after the Villani arrived, humanity was building its first colony on Mars. The construction project was massive, involving workers from 50 different countries. The colony would house 10,000 people and serve as a stepping stone for future exploration of the solar system. Taman had been invited to attend the opening ceremony as a guest of honor. The trip to Mars took only 6 hours in a Villani transport ship. Taman spent most of the journey looking out the window at the stars. He still couldn't believe this was his life now. A year ago he was sleeping in an alley. Now he was traveling to another planet. Jiwoo sat beside him reviewing preparations for the ceremony. The colony is ahead of schedule, he said. Your people are quick learners. The Villani engineers are impressed. Taman smiled. Humans are good at building things. It's destroying things we're also good at, unfortunately. Every species has that problem, Jiwoo said. The key is learning to build more than you destroy. Mars appeared in the window, a red ball growing larger by the minute. The transport ship descended toward the new colony, which sprawled across a crater near the equator. From above, it looked like a collection of white domes connected by tubes. Bioengineered trees were already growing in protected areas, beginning the long process of making Mars livable. The ship landed in a large bay. When Taman stepped out, he had to wear a special suit. Mars had an atmosphere now thanks to Villani terraforming machines, but it was still too thin to breathe. In 100 years, they said, people would be able to walk on Mars without suits. But for now, suits were necessary. The ceremony was held in the main dome, a huge space that could hold thousands of people. Representatives from every country on Earth had come. So had dozens of Villani, including Isol, who Taman hadn't seen in months. She greeted him warmly, hugging him like a son. I am so proud of you, she said. Look at what humanity has accomplished in just 1 year. This colony, the fusion reactors, the medical advances, you are all doing so well. We've had good teachers, Taman said. The ceremony began with speeches from various leaders. They talked about the future, about humanity's place among the stars, about cooperation between species. Taman only half listened. He was watching the crowd, seeing people from all over Earth working together. A year ago, some of these countries had been enemies. Now they were partners. Then came the moment when the colony's main life support system would be activated. This system, a combination of human and Villani technology, would provide air, water, and temperature control to the entire colony. A woman named Hyejin, one of the lead engineers, approached the control panel. That's when everything went wrong. Alarms began blaring throughout the dome. Red lights flashed everywhere. The ground shook violently and people started screaming. Taman grabbed onto a railing to keep from falling. What's happening? He shouted to Jiwoo. Jiwoo was checking a device on his wrist, his face turning pale. Ships, hostile ships. They're attacking. Through the transparent dome ceiling, Taemin saw them. Dozens of dark vessels descending from the sky, completely different from the elegant Vellani ships. These were brutal and angular, covered in weapons. They were firing at the colony, and explosions rocked the ground. Everyone to the shelters, Isil commanded, her voice cutting through the panic. Now, the crowd moved in a rush toward the exits. Vellani and humans worked together, helping people who had fallen, carrying children, making sure nobody was left behind. Taemin helped an elderly man who had trouble walking, supporting him as they ran. They made it to an underground shelter just as a massive explosion shook the colony above them. Dust fell from the ceiling. People huddled together, terrified. Children were crying. Someone was praying. Sul gathered the Vellani around her. Jiwoo, get me a status report. How many enemy ships? 42, Jiwoo replied, his voice tight with fear. They're Krell, a war species. They must have been watching Earth's progress. Why are they attacking? Taemin asked. Because you're succeeding, Isul said grimly. The Krell have been trying to join the Galactic Union for 5,000 years. They keep failing, the proving. They see humanity's rapid acceptance as a threat. If a species as young as humans can join the Union, it makes the Krell look even worse. Another explosion rocked the shelter. The lights flickered. A woman screamed, "Can you stop them?" Heejin asked Isul. Your ships are more advanced, right? Isul's expression was pained. Our ships are defensive. We are not a warrior species. We can protect, but we struggle to attack. The Krell know this. They are exploiting our weakness. Through a communication device, they could hear the battle happening above. Vellani ships were defending the colony, their shields absorbing hit after hit. But they weren't fighting back effectively. The Krell were pressing harder, targeting the colony's critical systems. We need help, one of the Vellani pilots reported through the radio. The colony shields are at 40%. If they break through, everyone inside will die. Taemin looked around the shelter. Hundreds of people were down here, human and Vellani alike. Above ground, more people were trapped in other parts of the colony. If the Krell destroyed the life support systems, everyone would suffocate. Then Hyejin stood up. We can fight back. Everyone looked at her. What do you mean? Isul asked. The colony has defensive weapons, Hyejin explained quickly. We installed them just in case. They're human-made, based on Vellani shield technology. We can adapt them to attack. You built weapons? Isul looked shocked. That was not part of the plan. We built defenses, Hyejin corrected. Because we knew the universe wasn't all friendly species like you. We hoped we'd never need them, but we're not idiots. We prepared, Isil hesitated. Taemin could see the conflict on her face. The Vellani didn't believe in violence. They had spent millions of years avoiding war. But they were dying up there, and so were humans. Do it, Taemin said. Everyone turned to look at him. We have to fight. The Vellani have given us so much. We can't just let them die because they're too peaceful to defend themselves properly. Let us fight for them. Hyejin nodded and ran to a control panel on the shelter wall. Her fingers flew over the holographic interface. I'm activating the defense grid now. But I need people who know how to shoot. A man stood up. I was in the military. Then a woman. Me too. More people stood. Soldiers from different countries, all volunteering to defend the colony. Within minutes, they had organized a defense team. The colony's weapons came online. Cannons that could fire powerful energy bursts. They weren't as advanced as Krell weapons, but they were good enough. The human soldiers coordinated with the Vellani pilots working together. Taemin watched on the monitors as human weapons struck Krell ships. The Krell had expected an easy target. They had thought the Vellani would be alone, defensive, and weak. They hadn't expected humans to fight back. More help came from Earth. Human military ships, newly equipped with Vellani engines and shields, arrived within an hour. Fighter pilots from nations that had once been enemies flew together in perfect formation. They defended the Vellani ships, protecting their alien friends while the Vellani focused on protecting the colony. The most surprising moment came when Doyun's ship was hit. Taemin watched in horror as the ship spun out of control, trailing smoke. It crashed into the Martian surface about a kilometer from the colony. I'm going after him, Taemin said, grabbing a suit. Too dangerous, Jiwoo protested, but Taemin was already moving. He took a small rover and drove across the red sand toward the crashed ship. The battle raged overhead, explosions lighting up the thin Martian sky. He found Doyen's ship half buried in sand. The hull was cracked and the ship was losing air. Taman used emergency tools to pry open the hatch. Doyen was inside, injured and bleeding that strange blue blood of the Villani. Taman? Doyen looked surprised. You should not be here. It's too dangerous. Shut up and let me help you, Taman said, pulling Doyen out of the wreckage. He supported the alien's weight and helped him toward the rover. That's when a Krell fighter spotted them. The ship swooped down, weapons charging. Taman and Doyen were completely exposed on the open sand. There was nowhere to hide, no time to run. But then something unexpected happened. 20 human soldiers emerged from the colony, forming a line between the Krell ship and Taman. They didn't have heavy weapons. They just stood there, a wall of bodies willing to die to protect their alien friend. The Krell pilot hesitated. This wasn't military strategy. This was something else. Something the Krell didn't understand. These humans were protecting a wounded alien at the risk of their own lives, for no tactical benefit. It made no sense. In that moment of hesitation, Villani reinforcements arrived, fresh ships from Earth, carrying more defenders. The Krell, seeing they were now outnumbered and facing an enemy that wouldn't break, made the decision to retreat. Their ships pulled back and fled into deep space. The battle was over. Humanity had won its first fight against a hostile alien species, but it hadn't won through superior technology or tactics. It had won through something simpler and more powerful. Taman got Doyen to medical care, then collapsed in exhaustion. When he woke up hours later, Isol was sitting beside his bed. You saved my son, she said, tears in her eyes. Your son saved my sister figure, Taman replied. We're family now. That's what family does, Isol smiled through her tears. The Krell monitored our Commu Part 7. The legacy 5 years had passed since that cold night in the Soul Alley. Taman stood on his balcony, looking out at a city that no longer resembled the one he remembered from his homeless days. The morning sun reflected off buildings made from living materials that cleaned the air around them. Flying vehicles moved in organized streams through the sky. In the distance, he could see the launch pad where ships departed for Mars, the Moon, and the new colony being built on Europa. Taman was 22 now. He wore simple clothes and kept his hair short. Despite everything that had happened, he tried to stay as close to his old self as possible. Fame had never felt comfortable to him. He was still just Taman, the boy who had made one good choice. But that choice had changed everything. Homelessness had been eliminated worldwide. The last shelter had closed 6 months ago because there was nobody left to shelter. Everyone had housing now, provided by a combination of Villani technology and human determination. Food was free, produced by matter replication systems in every neighborhood. Disease was nearly extinct, cured by Villani medical techniques that human doctors had now mastered. Earth had joined the Galactic Union officially 2 years ago. Human ships explored nearby star systems. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers. Human artists created works that were displayed on 100 different worlds. Humanity had become part of something larger than itself. But today was a difficult day. Today the Villani were leaving. Isol had explained it to him a week ago. We have stayed longer than we usually do, she said. 5 years instead of the usual 2. But our philosophy requires that species walk their own path. We must leave so that humanity can truly become independent. What if we fail without you? Taman had asked. Then you will learn from your failure and try again, Isol replied. That is how species grow. We cannot hold your hand forever. Now the day had arrived. Taman dressed carefully and went to the spaceport where the Villani were gathering for departure. Thousands of humans had come to say goodbye. There were tears and hugs. Friendships had formed between the two species, and breaking those bonds hurt. Jiwoo found Taman in the crowd. His friend looked sad. I will miss working with you, Jiwoo said. You have taught me much about humanity. You taught me more, Taman replied. You taught me that the universe is bigger and more wonderful than I ever imagined. They embraced. Then Jiwoo joined the other Villani boarding the ships. One by one, the elegant vessels lifted into the sky. The crowd watched in silence as their alien friends departed. Some people waved. Others just stood quietly, feeling the weight of the moment. But 3 Villani remained behind. Isol, Doyen, and Hana walked over to where Taman stood. Hana was 15 now, no longer the small child he had saved, but her eyes still held the same warmth and gratitude they had held that night in the alley. You're staying? Taman asked, surprised. Just for a little while, Isul said. We wanted to give you something before we go. Doyen held out a package wrapped in cloth. Taman took it carefully and unwrapped it. Inside was his blanket, the old gray blanket his mother had given him. The blanket he had wrapped around Hana to keep her warm, but it had been changed. The Villani had preserved it perfectly, repairing all the holes and tears. The fabric looked new but still felt like the original. They had woven something into it too, threads that glowed very faintly with light. When Taman wrapped it around himself, it felt warm just like he remembered. This blanket changed the galaxy, Hana said, speaking perfect Korean now. You gave away everything to save me. We wanted you to have it back so you never forget. Taman felt tears on his face. I could never forget. Isul placed a hand on his shoulder. We have watched humanity for 5 years. We have seen you struggle and succeed. We have seen you make mistakes and learn from them. We have seen you argue among yourselves but always find a way to work together in the end. You are ready, Taman. Your species is ready, how can you be sure? Taman asked. The responsibility still felt overwhelming sometimes. Do you want to know the secret of the proving? Isul asked. We do not test species to judge them. We test them to show them what they are capable of becoming. You passed the proving, but that was just the beginning. Every day since then you have been proving yourselves again. And you have succeeded. She looked out at the city, at all the humans going about their lives. When we first arrived, 60% of your people lived in poverty. Now that number is 0. You had 12 active wars. Now you have peace. Your planet was dying from pollution. Now your air and water are clean. Your average lifespan was 70 years. Now it is 120 and still increasing. You did this, Taman, not us. We gave you tools, but you did the work. But what happens when problems come that we can't solve? Taman asked. What if another hostile species attacks? What if we face challenges we're not ready for? Doyen smiled. Then you will face them the same way you faced the Krell. Together. That is humanity's greatest strength. You are stubborn and loyal and brave. You fight hardest for those you love. The galaxy has never seen anything quite like your species. Hana hugged Taman tightly. You planted a seed that night in the alley. Now look at the garden that has grown. Promise me you will keep tending it. I promise, Taman said. The 3 Villani boarded the last ship. Taman watched as it rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars. He stood there for a long time after they were gone, the blanket wrapped around his shoulders, feeling the weight of the future pressing down on him. But he wasn't alone. Other people came to stand with him. Humans who had been changed by the Villani presence, who had learned to be better. They stood together watching the stars, knowing that somewhere up there, the Villani were watching back. That evening, Taman did something he had been thinking about for a while. He went to a youth center in one of the poorest parts of Seoul. The building was new, built to help teenagers who had difficult home lives. It provided shelter, food, education, and counseling. Everything Taman had needed when he was younger but never received. The director of the center, a woman named Borum, greeted him warmly. Taman, what brings you here? I want to volunteer, Taman said. I want to work with the kids here, the ones who feel lost and alone. I want to show them that things can get better. Borum smiled. We would be honored to have you. She introduced him to the residents. About 30 teenagers lived at the center, all from difficult backgrounds. Some had run away from abusive homes. Others had been abandoned. A few were dealing with addiction or mental illness. They looked at Taman with a mixture of recognition and skepticism. They knew who he was, but famous people rarely understood what their lives were really like. But Taman did understand. He had been where they were. He sat with them and told his story. Not the famous parts about aliens and spaceships, but the hard parts. The parts about being hungry and cold, about feeling invisible, about thinking nobody cared if he lived or died. I'm not going to tell you everything is perfect now, Taman said honestly. The world is better than it was, but people still struggle. You still have pain and problems. But I can tell you this, you matter. Your life has value, and there are people who care, even if it doesn't always feel that way. A girl named Yoonji raised her hand. She was about 16 with angry eyes. Easy for you to say. You're rich and famous now. You live in a nice apartment. How is that supposed to help us? Taman unwrapped his blanket and held it up. This is the only thing I owned when I was homeless. My mother gave it to me before she disappeared. It was full of holes, but it kept me alive. One night I found someone who needed it more than I did, and I gave it away. I thought I was going to die that night. But I survived, and that one choice changed everything. He walked over to Yunji and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. I'm not saying give away your stuff and wait for aliens to show up. That's not the point. The point is that kindness matters, that helping others matters. Even small acts of compassion can ripple out in ways you can't imagine. Yunji touched the blanket, feeling its warmth. This is really it? The actual blanket from the story? This is it, Taemin confirmed. And I want you to have it. Yunji's tough expression cracked. I can't take this. It's too valuable. It's valuable because of what it represents, Taemin said. Compassion, sacrifice, hope. Those things only have value if we share them. Keep the blanket. When you're feeling cold or alone, wrap it around yourself and remember that you matter. And someday, when you meet someone who needs it more than you do, pass it on. Tears ran down Yunji's face. The other teenagers gathered around, and Taemin spent hours talking with them, answering questions, sharing his experience. He promised to come back every week to volunteer. He would teach them about the galaxy, about the opportunities available to them, about the future they could build. Over the following years, Taemin kept that promise. He worked with homeless youth and refugees. He spoke at schools and community centers. He used his fame not to elevate himself, but to elevate others. He showed people that change was possible, that kindness mattered, that one person could make a difference. And the blanket passed.